Alright, well, welcome. So today we're going to be doing a little plaque here, where we're actually going to take and make a rustic-looking plaque using a precision CNC machine. So notice this is supposed to look like a log. We cut down a tree and then sliced it. And what we're trying to look like here is we've taken this log and inlaid not even inlaid, but just carved in a dog with a textured background. So you'll be able to put in whatever image that you want, but the goal we're trying to look here is that it looks like a log that we've cut down in. We'll be using the ShopBot desktop, and what we'll actually start out with here is a fresh new plank, which we'll have to zero our machine, hold our plank down to our desktop. This one involves a couple bits, so we'll be doing some bit changes, and then I will get into anything specific you want to see in the end. So let's start out by showing you the file, and then we'll start out by drawing a brand new fresh file. So you notice here I'll go into job setup. I had some blanks of cherry left over that were 8 inches by 8 inches. Since I'm pretty much going to be working off the top for this, since I'm pretty much going to be working off the bottom, I want to get a cut through. I just need a pocket. I'm not looking for a specific 3D thing off the top, so I did go ahead and zero it to the bottom. The depths of these pockets aren't crucial. The most important thing for me is this final toolpath that cuts all the way through. If my depth of my pocket or my carving here is, off a thou or two, it's not a big deal. So I'm more concerned about hitting the table. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be creating a job setup. We're going to come in, and you can see, originally I brought in a clip art that I had, and I brought that clip art in. I shrunk it down to size, and then I flipped it around, mirrored it, so he's looking to the left. Everything's always looking to the right. I'm left-handed. I want him looking to the left. So I did that. I created a couple circles, and then went into node editing and made it so they're not circles anymore. Made them look more rustic, like a tree. And after the drawing end of it's done, there's a couple tool paths that we do. And I want to show you how to do a pocketing tool path, a texture tool path with a certain start depth, and then even go into adding some color to the different tool paths, so when we do a preview, we can get a nice preview tool path that have a little bit of color that we could actually send out and show, let's say, our customer, and they can see it, what it would look like. And since I am also using the new VCarve, software for ShopBot. It's the new edition that's out. It's just a newer version of the PartWorks that we've all used. It's got a lot of new features on it, real nice. And then there's also the newer version of Aspire. So they went from 3.5 to 4, and that also has a lot of neat new features in it. So you can see there, this is the main plaque. You can see we pretty much maximize the use. I've got my tabs in here to hold that part from coming out on the end. And some of the things that are kind of overlooked a lot in this texturing toolpath is, why do I have a distance left around here? And we'll get into that as we start going. So I guess with that said, there's a quick overview, and I'm hoping at the end we'll use the webcam to actually show you us cutting this. So welcome everybody, and there's our overview, and let's get started. So, all right, I'm just going to minimize this and start a new file, and we'll also set up a ShopBot here in the end as well. Let me close that. All right, so VCarve Pro, all that is VCarve Pro ShopBot Edition is the new version of PartWorks. So if you're still using regular PartWorks 3.5 or 3.0, you'll be able to do pretty much everything that we're doing today. This is just the new software. I like to stay current with my drawing software. I always like the additions that the gentlemen at Vectric are adding. So I'm going to open up one. Again, I'm going to record this so you can come back and watch it and try to draw along. I don't expect anybody to keep up with the drawing today. It's more just an information session on some things that you're able to do. So ask questions and enjoy. All right, I'm going to create a new file, and I need to figure out the size of my blank. So the way this blank was set up was, and I'm going to go and use the webcam here a little bit, so if you want to have both of them open, and then we'll go straight into the software, is I have a blank of cherry that measures 8 inches by 8 inches. So when I go to put this on the machine bed, I've got my machine here that I'm going to zero out, and we'll get into that in a second. But I know this bottom left corner is my 0, 0, and this front edge is my X, and this back and forth axis is my Y. So if I have my piece and I put it right here at 0, 0, I know that that's the size of my blank, and that's where I want to draw it off, that 0, 0 location. So knowing that blank size, that it was 8 inches and 8 inches, I can put 8 inches in for the X and 8 inches in for the Y. How about volume right now? Let me speak up a little. I said I'm losing volume. Get the microphone a little closer to my mouth here. Alright, so 8 inches by 8 inches. Then how thick is it? You know, I can put a tape measure on it. And go, okay, that looks about 3/4 of an inch. So about 3/4 of an inch isn't good enough when it comes to thicknesses. The spoil board here is for us to cut into. It is a sacrificial board. However, we, one, don't want to cut too deep where we're taking out chunks like this, and the other, we don't want to cut not deep enough and not get all the way through our project. There's nothing more annoying when you get cutting your project out and you get all the way around your profile and you look and there's still some onion skin of material left on there and you didn't cut all the way through. I recommend going to Lowe's and just getting a cheap set of digital calipers. I think I paid $20 for these. When I say cheap, they're still very nice and accurate. And I'm just going to run this along here and measure my different thicknesses. So I'm averaging around 0.73 on this. And I'm just going to check a few of these. And I'm just putting a little bit of pressure on, running along with my mic. So I'm averaging about 0.73. So my tape measure at looked like 3/4 of an inch definitely would have been, you know, 0.02 thickness difference. So that's why I was glad to. It's nice to have a set of calipers there to get that just right, because that would either make me going down into the table a little too far or not quite enough. So like I said, I got a 0.73, and I do want to zero to the machine bed. So this is the part where you pick to the top of the board or to the bottom of the board. And we all know that the bottom of the board would be the top of the machine bed. So let me hit OK. There's nothing else here I really want to change. And then here's my drawing surface now. So this white box is my actual blank size. And everything that I draw with inside this white box is what's going to be in that blank. So just to kind of look back here at the other one, we see that it is a couple circles. It'd be a circle and a circle with a dog image on the inside. So let me bring this over. So the first thing you would want to do is you come up here and do import bitmap. And I want to import a bitmap for where my dog is. And that's where you go in and you find the bitmap of him. You select the file, open it up, and then it would bring in just that silhouette. So still low volume. Hang on, let me switch to a headset, see if that helps you. Hold on one sec, guys. You guys just want me to wear this goofy headset here. Luckily nobody will see me. Alright, how's that for sound now? I'm blowing up my charts over here. I do have a mouthful of marbles, Steve. How did you know? Alright. Alright, good. Let's rock then. Sorry, I switched to a headset. Yeah, I look like the ShamWow guy right now.
So I'm glad you guys can't see me. All right. Anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring in make a couple circles, and I want to do a bitmap trace of any image. So you go ahead and Google an image of whatever you want to bring in. I do a dog. I like dogs. I have two dogs that my best buddies. So bring in whatever you want. Just if you're going to use a clip art off the internet, make sure it's not one that's copyrighted. You don't want to be stealing anybody else's work. So I guess the first thing is I'm going to just come over and create a circle, and if I hover over the center of my drawing, it will snap to the center. Or I always got the option of just getting it close, drawing a circle that I think is close, and then I've got the align objects. So the align objects, if I click that one, it centers it right in the material. Real nice feature. So no matter where you have a shape, you can easily just click on one of these, where depending on where you need it to go, and it'll move it in place. So if I cut a circle about this big, I know I'm going to have a 1/4 inch bit going all the way around. So I want to leave at least a 1/4 inch of material on my edge here. So if I got a 0.25 as my bit size, and I know that bit is what's going to be run all the way around here, I could get this close to the edge, and I could actually go ahead and make my circle a little bit bigger. So a way to stretch the circle out and keep it in the center is I actually hold the shift key down right now, and then as I stretch, it stretches from the middle. Or if I didn't hold my shift key, I just stretch, it just stretches that one corner. So these are all the little quick shortcut commands. If you ever want to come up here to the help and go to help contents and read about all the little shortcut keys and all the tricks of the software, that's where all of that is. So that's where I'm getting that from, simply just from right there. So that's going to be about I'm going to go a little bit smaller because I am going to go ahead and make this with some different patches when I go and make it more log-like. So there's my first log, and I don't need, there's the outside of the log, and I'll set it up a little bit nicer for you in the camera if you want to see exactly what it is that we're doing. There's kind of your mock-up. Alright, so we know we got one outside circle, and I can always, come in here, grab another circle, hover over this circle, and it finds center automatically, and just drag it out. That'd probably be the easiest. Just remember, all this software, there's so many different ways of doing things. I could always have come in here to offset, said, hey, I actually want that in 1/2 of an inch exactly, and then boom, I could hit that, and it goes directly to 1/2 of an inch. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. There's multiple ways of doing things. There's no right and no wrong. It's really what is easiest for you. So find something that works for you and stick with it. You'll just keep getting more and more efficient. So let's actually edit undo that one. Let me go in just a little. I'm going to go in 5/8 just for grins here. So there's my basic log. This is just it's kind of funny here. We're using a precision CNC, but we're going to use it to cut something rustic looking. But hey, it'll cut the same rustic log over and over and over again. So my other thing is, before I get going too crazy with the shape of this, I also want to make sure I get a dog that fits inside of here. I got to get my dog to fit inside my circles. So we can bring a bitmap in, like we showed you up here. When you click on that, it shows you all the different image files, BMPs, JPEGs, GIFs, TIFFs. And once they're brought in, you still got one more thing you got to do to it. Come over here and you got to trace it. To toolpath, it actually has to be turned into vectors. So with this create vectors here, I come down to this one, trace bitmap, and it's going to trace this and make it a an actual vector. And you can play with the different settings. Sometimes you'll have ones that are in color where you'll have to do multiple colors. I can pick it up right there by him picking it up and doing the black's all I needed. I can do a preview of it, and this preview is where I can see these lines. And if you look here, what is going on with this noise filter and this corner fit? What that's doing is this isn't a very good image, really. See, it's very pixelated. So this here is where I'm smoothing it in and making it fit better to the pixels. I don't want it to follow each one of these little things and have it all choppy looking. So I've got it kind of toned up to get a more of a tighter fit. So you play with these and get them the way you want. Each image is different, but just kind of go with what the manufacturer settings come with and start with that. That's a good starting point. So, all right. If I zoom out, I'm pretty happy with the way the dog looks so far. I am going to go ahead and click Apply, and now it's stuck on there. And I hit Close because I'm done. I don't need the dog image right now. I can just click on it and move it over out of the way. And you can really do anything with this dog. You can come in now and do some node editing if he did some things that that you didn't need. I see this dog's got a little growth on his back, which I really don't want to see that. So I can go into node editing. So notice when you're just a pink vector, you've selected the entire vector. But when you go over here and click on node editing or hit the N key for a shortcut, you can now go in and edit the nodes, which are all these different points. So right here, I'm going to go insert a point and then cut the vector. I'll come up here and cut the vector. So I just cut out the centerpiece, which is where his little growth was, and delete that growth. Now if I want to join this in with a nice smooth curve, I just right-click on here and say Close Vector with the smooth curve. Boom, and that got rid of that growth, and it put in a nice curve there on his back. So you just want to go around and check your vector. Again, the higher the resolution you can bring in, the better. Now some people might like this. It's got little feathers for his tail. I am going to go ahead and cut the vector there, and cut the vector there, and get rid of this, and just hit delete. And right click, and again I'm going a little quick because I want to get through a lot in today's training, but there's some good tutorials on vectric.com for node editing, and the real thing is for you too to go in and play around with this. So I'm going to close vectors with a smooth curve. I saw he had one more little thing going on here, and you don't even have to hit insert point. I can just go right click, cut vector, right click, cut vector, and then select the one you want deleted, hit delete, right click, close vector with a smooth line, with a smooth curve. If I did a line, boom, it's just going to make a straight line. It doesn't look quite right to me. So I want to keep this with a smooth curve. So I am going to click on this node editing, close with smooth curve. So I had a question here saying sometimes his vectors won't close when he hits close vectors. So sometimes, if you have a vector that's too far apart and you just come over here and try to do the join command where you join open vectors, it won't always, because it has to have a small enough tolerance. So sometimes it's good to go into node, hit N, and find that green one. That's going to show you where the start and finish point is. And if you zoom all the way in on that, that's where it will usually show you if you've got a gap. So let's just go around, check the rest of this dog out. Now there are spots where it can be so little of a blurb that it's not going to show, because it might be, a 64th of an inch or something small in this blurb that you don't have to worry about it actually showing up. Like this right here, if I was curious if that was actually going to show up or not in his paw, I didn't want that to be that accented. I could go in and check it and see, well, how big is this? Is this actually something I'm going to see? It's 0.01 from there, so that bit's actually just going to come up. Let's just draw a quick bit here so you can see it. If I have a 1/4 inch diameter bit and I'm running around this paw, so here's a 1/4 inch diameter bit is what we'll be using, and here's the top of it, and we're coming around that paw like that. Can it actually get down in there to make that difference? No. So do you want to even bother with your time node editing? You really don't need to. So that bit would come around like that, and there's no way it can get down in there, so you don't have to worry about that. And I think we had one circle up here too. Yeah, Katrina here also made a good suggestion too. You know, a lot of my trainings, I will leave the, or a lot of my files, I'm sorry, I leave the original one over here, and then I'll do a control copy paste and bring the new cleaned up version over here. That way, in case I modify something way too far that I actually want to go back to, and I can't get back to it if I've altered it too far, but I got an original copy over there. So there's a dog. And like I said, I don't want him just flipping the other way. So I can go down here to the transform objects, mirror selected objects. And be careful here. Sometimes you want this and sometimes you don't want this selected where it says create a mirrored copy. Right now I do not. I want to just take this one original and flip him horizontally. And then just have him go in there like that. So the dog is still a little too big to fit inside there, so we are going to have to shrink him. And with what I was saying before, I double click on him, I hold shift, and I shrink him down. I can get the dog to, to start fitting down inside there. And then I want him centered in the thing too. So right now he's pretty good. It's all roughly proportioned, but now we're ready to start making it look rustic. So we've got just a plain, I mean, that's neat. I guess it looks like a button. I mean, the beauty of the ShopBot is it is going to cut that out very beautifully and nicely and accurately. But sometimes we might have something here where we want to make it look a little bit more rustic, like we do in the 3D preview. And I want to make it look like something I could put up in a cabin or something. So the way I did that, and there's, again, no right or wrong way. There's lots of different ways. You could have just drawn a bunch of curves and made them look like that. But for me, the easiest thing to do was go into Node Editing, which I hit N for. I could have clicked over here. And I just went in here and inserted a bunch of points. So let me right-click once to show you. Right-click here and insert point. And I could do a lot of right-clicks, and it would take me a little bit longer to go all the way around. But what I also noticed next to insert point is I, which is shortcut for how to do insert a point. And if I just randomly go around and hover over, when that little swash shows up underneath my thing, I'm just hitting I on my keyboard. And I'm not trying to get these in any perfect spacing. If I tried to space these all out perfectly, then it wouldn't look very natural. It would look, more man-made. So I'm just going ahead and making these different I insert points all the way around. So there, I just made a bunch of different points. Now, within Node Editing, I'm going to start right here at the top. I can go in here and I can grab these different ones and do different shapes, different things with them. That's going to all start looking pretty much the same, doing that around there, right? If I keep doing those little humps. So let me do some edit undos. I can also right-click and see how if I right-click, I can change it to a Bezier curve. So doing that, versus having one square in the center, now I've got two little squares, which means I got these two handles here that I can pull from. So I can really make some different shapes with this now. As I pull one, it moves the other too. So it's kind of a neat little feature. So let me go and make some Beziers along here. And I'm just going to make them all along this half here. So we'll get another question here while I'm just making random points. You get a cleaner cut with the less Bezier or the less points you have in a vector. Just for habit, I always have the less points. If I don't need the point in there, I don't need it. Like if I was just cutting a full circle, I'd go in here and delete all these points that don't need to be in there. You're really not going to see it if your machine's all dialed in, but again, it's another one of the things that it's going to be looking for. So if you can get it out of there, get it out of there. So let's go ahead and start making some, wood looking, and I guess depending on what part of the world you come from is what your trees look like. But I'm just, you could really sit here and try to calculate all this and get it just right, and you're going to drive yourself nuts trying to do this. So I'm just randomly doing some grabs. What I just want is this thing out of proportion from being round. Oh, now I notice over here I forgot to do my Bezier, so I will start selecting these, do my Bezier curves. I enjoy this kind of stuff, just messing around, seeing what kind of neat little things you can create. I mean, I think it's funny, using a precise CNC machine here, and we're going and cutting something rustic out, but it's kind of cool, neat things that you can do, just really whatever you can come up with. And just kind of grab this thing. I'm grabbing it in all kinds of different ways. The more unique we make it, the more real it would be. We found it out in the woods. So maybe grab this and zoom back out. It's starting to look, it looks different all the way around. So so that looks good. However, again, the center here, this is a little too, it's perfectly round, so it's not the way we want it. So if I was just to go in here and click Bezier curve, it's just going to make that one portion of Bezier. And it's not all those points. So I do need all the points in there. So I am going around again and hitting I and inserting all of these. Steve asked, why wouldn't I just do an offset? And that would work just fine. But for me, I would see that exact offset on there, and that would drive me nuts knowing that they're exactly the same. So he's saying, why don't we just do an offset? We'll get it, save us from going around and doing all them clicking. So if I went out an eighth of an 5/8, there's that same one. But for me, that looks too uniform. I want to have a whole different circle on the inside doing a whole different thing than before. All right, Eugene had a good one. Why don't you just do an offset and then rotate it or flip it, and it won't look uniform. All perfectly good suggestions. But again, for me right now, the way I want to do this is I would like to go in and make it look unique. But I like your way. It definitely be a lot quicker doing it like that. I guess my way is going in definitely will take a little bit longer too. But this works. It's art, right? It's all in the eye of the beholder. So yeah, Steve was telling me over here, this would be a good way to do it if you were an hourly employee, right? Yeah, I had to get it just right, boss. So that one looks like a pretty rustic log now. Again, we just talked about 5 different ways you could have done this: offset, rotate, mirror, flip, whatever. But it's definitely an authentic log looking. So we cut down a tree, and this is what we're looking at the end of it. So, and you can put whatever clip art you want in there. I think this is a neat project, and then stain it to get the different colors. So we're good with this. This is our drawing. Our drawing is technically done. Now it's time for us to toolpath. So for that, I'm going to go up here and go File, Save. And since this is a new project, I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this Dog, P-L-A-Q-U-E, Dog Plaque. And I'm going to go in, and I'm going to give this a name of Dog, P-L-A-Q-U-E. And why am I going ahead and putting it in a different folder? Just so you know, this is something that just helps me, as eventually you're going to have, dozens and dozens of projects. So I have a thing called TJ's Projects, which is a big folder, and I go in and there's every single one of my projects in there, and I can go into it. It's got the drawing file. It's got a DXF version if I got to share it with an older version of software. I've got my .sbp, which is my cut file. And then any pictures of whatnot, I've got all that in there as well. So it's got everything that it needs to have all inside one folder. So organization is key, because eventually you're going to have a lot of projects, and it's no fun when somebody's like, hey, can I get that? And you sit there for 10 minutes trying to find it. So definitely come up with a good organization plan. All right, so with that said, I have my drawing done. I am now ready to move on to toolpath view and give this a toolpath. So again, saved, and I switch over to my toolpaths tab, and now I got to start thinking about how I'm going to toolpath this. What order of operations? I don't need a hold down on this one, because if you switch back over to your camera, your webcam view, you'll notice that I've already got a blank with 4 holes on the corners. And these 4 holes are what are going to go down into the spoil board. And I know, being a circle cutting out a rectangle, I hold my circle up in front of this. I got plenty of room on the corners for them screws. There's no sense of me going in and making a tool path for it, because it's pretty easy for me to see that one. So with that said, let's start thinking about which ones we'd want to do first. Well, I think the first things first is I need to do a pocket. So if I was to grab this, say I want this pocketed inside here, and I go and I hit pocket, and I give this my pocket depth of 0.25 of an inch. I'm going to select and use a 1/4 inch up spiral, and I am going to slow it down. Well, this one we can leave here. That's fine. 3 inches a second for that. Well, let's go a little bit slower. You guys see it cut. And I'm going to set if I want it going offset or raster. Again, all depends on you. I like to leave it at raster for what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to use climb because I'm cutting out of hardwood, hard natural wood. And go ahead and call pocket all, because that's what it's going to do. But when I go and hit calculate, notice in my 3D view, and I go demonstrate that view, my dog's not in there. So something happened there. So instead of creating a brand new toolpath, I'm just going to click on the toolpath and go in here and see, what did I do wrong? Well, I notice I clicked on the vector that I want to pocket, but I also want to give that pocket some limitations. I don't want it to pocket the dog, so I actually need to have both selected, both the vector and the dog. So now if I go over here and hit calculate, now I see that the dog is inside there. Is there enough room for that dog to get all the way, for that bit to get all the way around the dog? Do I need to shrink the dog down? Let's find out. So there, I can get around his nose, and it looks like I can get around his tail pretty well. If I had a spot right in here where, say, my bit wasn't going all the way through, and I could see wood here, I just come back in and simply shrink the dog down and make it so he's a little bit smaller, or make your circle a little bit bigger. That way your bit gets all the way through there. So for me, I see the tail and the head, there's definitely distance to go through. All right, so there's your pocket. Now the pocket's great, right? It's going to put a nice flat background on it. And let's give it a color here so we can see what it looks like. We'll give it a dark color. For me to give one a color, I just select it. I go up here to toolpath color, and I was going to give it a dark one like that. So, that's what it's going to look like. If I stain it, it'll be dark, but it's flat. It doesn't look that unique to me. It doesn't look rustic or rough. So that's where a texturing toolpath comes along. Texturing toolpaths are a really neat little feature they've got here in the software. And it is the third one over on the second row down, texturing toolpath. And when you go in to do this one, it's the same thing as a pocket. You want to have both the outside and the inside selected. And for this here, I actually wanted to use a 1/4 inch ball nose, which I see it already had selected. So there's my 1/4 inch ball nose. And let me go in and check my feeds and speeds for this. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3 and a 3. Since it is going up and down, it's kind of like a V-carve or a 3D. The X, Y, and the Z is all moving at the same time on these too. So I like to make sure the feed rate and the plunge rate are the same. And it's not taken off a lot. It has a 10% step over. So you could really dial this up. If on this desktop, 3 and 3 for that is no problem. Now what about a start depth? What exactly is a start depth? Well, if you come back here and look at the one that's already done, notice how on my texture toolpath I have a start depth of 0.25. So that means the bit is going to start cutting 0.25 inches down off the top. And we need it to cut like that because we've already pocketed it down 0.25. If I didn't have a start depth right here, if that was just 0, that's going to try pocketing up here where it's already milled out. And I'm really just pocketing air at that point. So we need to make sure we get a step down in there. A start depth. And I want that start depth at 0.25 because that's where I've pocketed it. And then here's where really the crapshoot comes in as far as texturing. You got to kind of be the brains behind the curtain on this one and come up with what you want it to look like. And it's nice because you can preview it and you can always come back in and change it. But you create your own unique texture here. So you just kind of follow along. What does it say? Maximum cut depth. So the maximum cut depth that it would do is 0.1. I'm going to go ahead and say you can cut up to 0.2 deep. And then what's the minimum cut depth? The minimum cut is 0.07. Sure, that's fine. How about the minimum cut length? I personally like a nice long, carve when I do my texture. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 2-inch. And it's saying the shortest is 0.98. Maybe I'll go 0.75-ish. Overlap, I'm going to leave, and step over, I'm going to leave, and just see what this looks like. And also, it's going to go just straight across. It's going to line up with the grain, which would then show on the dog. So why don't we go ahead and give this, say, like a 45-degree angle. And texture all. And I'm going to hit calculate. We're going to have to come back, though, because we need to know what boundary vector offset means. But I'm going to go ahead and hit calculate, and let's just work on getting the texture the way we want it right now. So preview visible toolpath, and I see it cutting. It's got nice long, passes. It looks good, but it's killing my dog. It's routing into my dog. It's routing into my edge. It looks horrible. I mean, this is not acceptable. So when you're using a straight bit, a lot of us are used to using a tapered ball nose, so it tapers down to a point so you can get it around an edge or a ledge real well. I only have a straight 1/4 inch. So that straight 1/4 inch, I can't bring it all the way to the edge here because that would be plunging down and cutting into the edge. I actually need to come in here to this, and I need to give it a boundary offset. So how far can that bit come to that vector? It needs to stay in a good distance. Well, if my bit is a 1/4 inch, I need to stay in at least the radius of it. So if I have a 1/4 inch, I want to go half of that, which is 0.125, and then just a little bit more. Let's leave it at 0.125 right now, and I'll show you what that looks like. But we want to go in a little bit further because that can still touch the side. So that point, reset, preview all toolpaths. So there it is, going around. There's the dog. Then here's the texture. Now see how it's staying in? See the gap in between the edge here? So that's called the boundary offset, and that's staying in just a little bit. That way that bit isn't touching the sides or the dog. And you can't really see it in this preview right now, but we've only set it in the radius of the bit, which actually, if it went straight down right at the edge, it would leave a little nip in that wood. I can say that because I just cut one yesterday to make sure this was all going to come out nice, and that's what it did. So can't really see it on the previews, but on mine I had a couple little lines right here where it went straight down and hit. So one thing you want to make sure is your dog's small enough that you're still getting some texture in there, or is it flat the whole way? If that's flat the whole way, go in and shrink your dog down. I can get all the way through there. But I am going to do one thing here, and I'll show you when we change. I'm just going to go in just a little bit, maybe just 0.0002 in, and hit calculate, and reset, and preview all toolpaths. The beauty of this software is it's 3D. It's 3D preview. Be able to sit here and preview this stuff in 3D and see it. I mean, you're pretty much going to see what you're seeing out on the machine. So if it's doing something that you don't like here, I guarantee it's going to do the same thing out on the machine. So spend your time doing your 3D previews. There's nothing more aggravating than spending all this time getting the material ready, and then you go to cut it and the thing isn't cutting right. So all right, so this is looking pretty good. I'm happy with the dog so far. It looks good. You know, let's give him a, if I click on him, I can also give him a toolpath color so it all looks the same here. And you can see there is a flat around there, but that's because we have a straight ball nose, not a tapered ball nose, and I had to give it a pocket boundary vector offset. What did I said? I had that at 3 and 3. We'll leave it alone. You can always click on these and go back in and modify them and check them. And if you'd modify something, say I ended up modifying that, I would go down here and you make sure you hit calculate. All right, final step for toolpathing is we need to put a profile on this to cut out our log. So for that, I will go in and do a profile toolpath, and I said profile, which is the top left one here, and I'm going to go in and double click on it. Start depth, well, we don't want it to start down in the material, so we leave that alone. That's only when you want to start down in the material. It has nothing to do with where you zeroed. So if I have a 0.73 material, I'd rather cut into the spoil board just a little than not all the way through. So I'm going to go 0.73 plus 0.02 and give it just a little bit deeper. So that's a 0.75 down in there. And then I'm going to go select my bit, which was my 1/4 inch upcut. And there is really no sense of going that fast for what I'm doing, so I'm going to slow this down to 2.5. It's 3 passes. Remember, rule of thumb, you know, whatever the diameter of your bit is, it's probably about right to go that depth for cut. You don't want to go too deep and snap your bit off. So that's a good cut there. Do I want to cut to the outside or the inside? Well, if I cut to the inside, it's going to be inside here, and it's going to make it a lot closer to this. So I actually want that on the outside. Since I'm using a non-man-made wood, I'm going to leave this with a climb. And as far as tabs, I do need a tab. I've got my screws to hold down, but I need to somehow hold my good material to my waste material. And for me, really, my go-to tab, my size for all 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch materials is 0.4 long and 0.24 tall. Because notice it's actually going to be 0.22 when it's done, because we are cutting into our material a little bit more. So that's a good size. And I like a 3D tab. It cuts quicker and it's easier to remove with the utility knife when you're done. So edit tabs, and this is where I'm actually going to add them. So this is where you'd have to have your vector selected. And think about it. Where do you want these tabs? Do you want it down inside here? You know, inside these little crevices? for me, that's a lot harder for me to sand. You have to go find a tiny little spindle sander. For me, if you got to, to touch up those nubs, I try to find an outside curve like this, where if I do have to touch it to a sander, it'll be easy to get it on like a 12-inch disc sander or even a random orbital. So I put them on the outside like that, and I kind of got them with the grain. Well, these two kind of with the grain, so it'll be easier to remove. So there's my outside tabs, and I will go profile all. And just to give it a ramp, so we're not hurting the bit or beating up on it, a ramp is allowing that bit to come in. So just to kind of draw you a mock-up here, if we were looking at the edge of our board like this, and we're looking at the edge grain, and so here's our bit. I got our bit coming in here, and I'm going to move around our bit. So for right now, it would plunge 0.25, make a pass all the way around, plunge 0.25 more, go through, and then plunge all the way and make a pass. So that's 3 big plunges. What a ramp will do is start here, come down at an angle to 0.25, and then make its first pass. Come back around, clean out that ramp, ramp down to 0.5, and do the same thing. So we're going into a piece of cherry here. We might as well put a ramp on here. And I did click off my toolpath, so I lost it. So now I got to go back in and redo it. That's what I get for talking. So 0.75. Select bit. I'm using a 1/4 inch up, is what I've got sitting here, and I slowed it down to 2.5, and 3 passes on the outside. I want a climb cut. I wanted tabs. The tabs did stay, but the sizes didn't because I never hit calculate. So I wanted 0.4 and 0.24, but I also wanted to add a ramp. So just add a ramp over maybe 2 inches. And this is all just, approximate. 1 to 2 inches would be fine for this. Hit profile all outer. Give it a name, you know what it is. And then this message right here that I'm sure a lot of the veterans in the group today will attest to this, that once you've seen this about 50 times, you stop reading it. And the time that you stop reading it will be the time that you accidentally typed in the wrong decimal, and you'll hit OK, and you'll never know. Where this says 0.73, maximum 0.75, that's not a problem. That's 0.02 deeper. That's the thickness of 3 business cards. But the time you don't read this and you hit OK, it's actually going to say 7.5, and then you're in trouble. Guilty. Been there, done that. So, okay, so we're good. And then let's just preview that again. Show my tool pass going around. I see it, there's 3 passes. I see my tabs down in there. 3D preview is our key. I also like to go out of a 3D and do a 2D preview, but come down here to where it says solid, and then check all your toolpaths. So it's showing me that, yes, my toolpath is on the outside of that line. My pocket is, yes, on the inside of this line, but not inside the dog. I can go down here, and you see where the blue is. It shows that I can't get a bit inside there, so that's going to be more round. Are you okay with that? Spots like that. It can't get down inside there with that bit, but it actually makes it a little bit smoother that it can't get down in there. So now under his neck here, he's not going to have as predominant of a chin because he's got more of a rounded neck now. So is that rounded neck going to be sufficient for you? So that's a matter of you just checking it out. So do a 2D check, do a 3D check, and make sure you do a good couple checks, because whatever you're seeing here is what you're going to see out on the material. All right, so I'm happy with this, and we're going to add a couple new things here once we get over to the ShopBot end of it, but I wanted to spend the first hour doing the drawing, getting it toolpath, and ready to cut. The last step that we have not done is did a save. And I go in and hit save, and it says error. And why is it saying error? It's saying that I have both use tool number 1, but the geometry of the tools are different. So this is great. It's giving me an error. My pocket and my texture says it's using the same bit number, but it's the bits have different geometries. So let's go and check. What is he even talking about? We don't have a tool changer. We're just using a desktop. Well, when you go in here and look at these bits, they have a tool number, and that's how the software is able to describe the difference between the bits by the different tool numbers. So if that one's bit 1 and that's an upcut, and this one here is a ball nose and it's also it's also bit 1, we got a problem. I need to give this a different bit number. So really I could just give this a different number and hit OK and make sure you hit calculate. What I have next to my sheet here, and I need to take a picture of it to show you, is I've got 1 through 15 written down on an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got a certain bit assigned to each number. So every single one of my bits in here has a number that's different from each other. So I never have overlap of any. And then I also have them printed out next to me, so when I have it up here and it says bit 1 1/4 inch upcut, I can verify on my sheet, yes, that's the right bit. So right now it's saying, and this is how it's going to save. It's going to save 3 toolpaths together. It's going to do an upcut, which will be a pocket. It's going to do a texture with a ball nose, and then it's finally going to do a profile of an outer. So we're going to have to do a bit change, and that's the beauty of this new ShopBot TC Inch. It's a tool changer processor. It doesn't mean you have to have a tool changer, but you're able to let the machine prompt you when to do a tool change without shutting down the software. So for some of you that have seen this for the first time, they have older machines, wait till you get impressed here. So I am going to go ahead and save this, and I'm under dog plaque, and I'm going to call it dog plaque, and notice it's .sbp, and I go ahead and hit save. So if I go and look under my dog plaque folder, I have a dogplaque.crv and I have a dogplaque.sbp. So you always have 2 files. You have one that's a drawing file, and you have one that is a ShopBot ran file. The ShopBot, if you went and opened up your ShopBot software and you go in here and you try to part file load, and you look here in dog plaque, it only recognizes a .sbp. We get a lot of guys just starting out that are in their drawing over here, and they just do this file save and think that they're done. And yes, it did save the tool paths, and this is all in here. If I was to send you this file, all this would be in here. But you actually have to come over here to this little guy and post-process it out. And that does a file processed for the ShopBot. So you post-process it out. So that's what that is. So you'll need 2 files for every drawing that you do, every project. So so what we just did there took us, what, 10 minutes to go through and draw a pocket, a texture, I'm sorry, not draw, but toolpath, 3 things. I just want to show you in here, if you ever go in and do a part file load, and you go in here, sorry, it's kind of loud here. Hold on. If you ever come in here and do a part file load, yeah, hang on. The volume will come back in a second. There's just, yep. All right. If I go into dog plaque and I go to the dogplaque.spp, oops, I meant to go file, part file edit, dog plaque. Right here is all the code that writes that file. For us to sit there and click on little icons and type in little numbers, we made it real easy. For this here, this is how they used to have to do it, where they had to write in all these codes, you know, line by line by line. So to run our file all the way, it took 6,729 lines to get down to that one. So that's where the software is really nice. To try to write all that is crazy. So so boom, that's all your different lines. And really what this is saying is move M3 means move 3 axes, and it's saying which direction it's moving them. So move X, move Y, move Z. So you're seeing it move in the positive, and then a negative. So those are your 3. And it finally shows you down here your last one is 0, 0, 1.5. That's your final position. So you could come in here and change that if you wanted to. Maybe you wanted that final position to be moved out of the way. You could actually come in here and edit that, and I'll go 2418 and hit save. So watch, when I cut my file now, it's going to send that to the back of the machine. All right, so you're going to want your webcam up, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can't square this machine, see if we can zero out the machine, get our board attached, and get the cutting started, because the cutting is going to take a little while. So you guys aren't allowed to make fun of my ShamWow headset. If you see me on camera, I'm doing this for you so you can hear me better. So get all your obstructions out of the way, and not just off the main board here, but off from the side too. A lot of the times, sometimes I'll accidentally leave a drill over here and it'll get knocked off. So just to get a little more oriented with the machine, here's our ShopBot desktop, and this has a 24-inch cutting surface in the X. It has a 18-inch cutting surface in the Y, and then you got about 3.5 inches or so here in the Z. So what I need to do is, since it's the first time we use the machine today, is we need to zero it in. And we've got these built-in proc switches up here and then up in this corner. So by simply clicking on some icons here, I can zero out this machine pretty easily. If I go over and hover over this XY, it says click to set X and Y location using proximity switches. So I click on that, and it's going to move the machine into 0, 0. So it comes over, it hits the proximity switch, records the location, goes back, hits it one more time, and then changes that number. So now it knows exactly where X0 is. And now we come down to try to find Y0. Hits that and memorizes that location. It says your tool is now zeroed in the X and Y axes. Okay, great. We're good. The only other axis we need to do is the Z axis. We need to know the distance between that spindle and that table. So for me, I am going to move the gantry over manually. I'm just using my keypad. And if you don't have a nice flat table, you're going to probably want to do a 0 and zero your table so you can get a nice flat table. I zero mine every few projects to keep it nice and flat. Notice we're using a spindle here. High frequency spindles are nice because they're quiet, you get a lot higher RPMs, and they're a little bit more precise. But with these higher spindles, you do have a nut and a collet nut that come apart. So every time you change a bit, pull them apart, knock the sawdust or blow them out if you got an air compressor, blow it out, and then make sure you spring it back together. If that thing's not together, it's not ready to go back in the spindle. And this first bit that we were using a 1/4 inch spiral to pocket that out. And I'm just going to stick this in there. You do not need to prove to the machine how strong you are. Just line your wrenches up. Get it tight. I got it tight, and then I give it just a little bit more to hold it in place. Since there's no proximity switch for the Z, because we're constantly changing our bits and changing our heights, we use the Z0 plate. And the Z0 plate clips on here to the collet nut. And notice as I touch this, that input 1 should be coming on. There should be a green light flashing on. So we're kind of making our own little proximity switch while we're doing that. And just like before with the X and the Y, this thing has an icon to make it easy for zeroing the Z. And I will just click on that icon. It says hit enter when a plate is ready. Plate is ready, so I'll hit OK. And it's going to go down and do the same thing the proximity switches did and touch it twice and record its location. So every time you change a bit, you got to do this. You don't have to change your X and Y if you haven't changed anything. But every time you change a bit, you'll have to do this. And this this message is pretty important here. It says, remember to remove alligator clip and Z0 plate before continuing. You wouldn't believe how many calls we get a week of people saying, oh, do you sell them clips with the little bungee cords on them? I accidentally left mine on when I hit that button and started my file, and it took off. So yeah, make sure that you take that off there. All right, I'm moving my gantry out of the way because I want to hold down my new part. So think about how we drew this part, the orientation of it. We know where 0, 0 is on the table, but where was 0, 0 in our drawing file? So let me bring the drawing file back up. Well, 0, 0, I can see is right where those two lines cross, and that's where my project is. So I'm actually going to take and set this in there right at 0, 0. And I know if I hold it flush with my board, I'm right at 0, 0. And this one, I just had 4 screws in the corner. Easy one to screw down. You just need a drill. So, with that being said, I'll go ahead and put my screws in. And we did 0 to the machine bed in our drawing, and that's where I just physically did it with the plate. Sometimes you're doing like a 3D file or something, you might actually do it on top of this material, but for this today, this works for us. So that's the main portion where I'm going to be working, is right in this corner. It's a one-man show here trying to do a... So there is my board, and I'll get it going closer once the cutting starts. But so first thing we do now is let's just step back here since I'm talking, or you got something going on, and make sure we've got all our steps covered. Do we have our X and Y zeroed? Yes. Do we have our Z zeroed? Yes. Do we have our part held down? Yes. Is this the first cut of the day? Have you warmed up your spindle yet? So make sure that's something you do. With the C, that's a cuts. And that's 5, spindle warm-up routine. I already did that. And then I could always do a preview here and run my file in preview mode and make sure it looks right before I cut it. But I'm feeling pretty good. We did some 2D checks. We did some 3D checks. So let's go ahead and try to cut this. And just so you know, there is a, let me move this up, go jog to, oops, sure. For the desktop now, there is a new boot that goes on it. And that's this little foot right here. It's a magnetic boot that goes up over this bit, and that's where your dust collection then goes up into here. I'm going to leave this off for video purposes. It is going to kick up some sawdust. Normally the sawdust wouldn't be there, but then again, if the boot's on there, you're not going to see it. So, all right. So at this point, I would go File, Part File Load. Then I find my dog plaque, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Start. And it's going to ask me is tool number 1 in spindle, and that's where it's nice to have that little printout going, oh, okay, what was my tool 1? My tool 1 is a 1/4 inch spiral. Okay, yes. Is Z zeroed? Yes, it is zeroed, but have you also zeroed it to where you drew it? Yes, I did zero it to the machine bed because that's where I drew it. Yes. Next thing it's going to do is ask you to turn on your spindle or router. If you have an alpha machine, you'll have a little remote pendant where you'll have to hit the green button. If you have a desktop or a standard, make sure your router is on. For guys with a VFD, look over here to the right-hand side and make sure you see the digital lights are on your VFD, because as soon as you hit enter, it's going to kick on its own. So I will go ahead and hit enter. Spindle starts up, lifts up to a safe height, now comes over to start making its cut. So notice all that chip being there. If we were to have that dust collector on, none of that chip would be there, but you'd also be able to see what's going on. So he's starting to pocket all the way around the dog now. All these different lines of code would all have to be stuff that was written in. And it's able to figure it all out just by us giving it a pocket toolpath. 1/4-inch bits are pretty loud. Good to have a set of earplugs or muffs on. Then it's going to go into a finishing pass all the way around. That just does a nice little finish pass that cleans up any rough edges. Then it'll go and do it on the dog too. Perfect. So with the ShopBot TC Inch, what it is going to ask you now is tool number 6 in spindle? Well, no, we just got done doing bit number 1. Clearly, our next bit is the ball nose, which is bit number 6. So I would hit no at this point. And it says, would you like to use the keypad to move to a height? Well, yeah, I would. I'm right in the middle of this part. It's really not going to do me any good over here. So yes. And here's where I'll pick up. I'm going to use my arrow keys. And I'm going to try to move over to approximately the same spot that I was before, to 0. So what do you think around the, if I try to 0 that right there, and I got all that sawdust sitting on the ground, I'm not going to get a flat 0. You're not going to get a good read with that sitting on there. So that's where it's nice if you have an air compressor or a vacuum where you can blow it off and keep it nice and flat. That 0 plate's going to register wherever it's at, and if it's something underneath it, it's going to throw off your 0. So I blow that off. I do need to do my bit change here so I can get into my 1/8-inch ball, or I'm sorry, my 1/4-inch ball nose. And just like before, come in here, get that top wrench started. This bottom one has to come up from underneath, and if you get them close, then you can just pinch them together with your hand. And that's how easy it is to pull it off. I am going to pull it off. I'm going to break them apart. Even though it's one cut, just make sure they spring back together okay. Stick this back in place. And then now I'm going to insert my ball nose. So the ball nose now is a brand new bit that I just put in. So there's no way that I have the height from the tip of that ball nose to the top of that material accurate. So I need to do another 0. I don't need to do an X or a Y. None of that's changed. It's this it's just the Z height that's changed. So I'm going to put my Z plate back in there. Well, it looks like the camera froze. So hold on one sec. I'm going to restart the camera. And camera should be coming back live and fresh just in time for me to hit escape or close. It says change to bit number 2, then hit enter when ready to 0. Okay. It even gives you a second shot. Are you ready to use your keyboard? I guess this would be a good spot. You could put your dust foot back on if you forgot. So I will hit no right there. Hit enter when it's ready to 0. Okay, it's ready to 0. And let it go down and do its thing. Alright, and then make sure you take your alligator clip out of there. And then for this one here, I'll try to do some camera angles, but let me get it started first, because this will take about 10 minutes to do, so I'll readjust the camera once I get it started. But I do hit OK, and the next screen it says OK to start spindle, so we're back in action right now. So, OK, spindle's on. So notice it's going in at a 45 degree now, and it just picks up and drops down and makes all these different little knurls in it. So that's what that toolpath does. It's called texturing, and you can make it short little BB looking ones. You can make long stretched out ones. You can have different ball noses for different effects. It's really a pretty neat little toolpath. Let me see if I can zoom. We'll get it going a little bit more, and then we'll try to zoom in even a little bit further for you to see. Not as fast as, say, a pocket or a profile. Why is that? Well, the X, the Y, and the Z are all moving now, and it's got a lot of picking up and setting down. So you got a lot of ramping in there. And then as we're cutting too, Katina here had a question about the plastic enclosure around the machine. I have to show you here at the end. It's just a new feature that we have on our current desktops that we're sending out. It's a little easier for the users to take them on and off. I can't click away right now. When the machine's running, the mouse is stuck on stop, but it does see a couple questions popping up. If I make multiple copies, will all the textures be exactly the same? There's a feature right when we're making the actual texture toolpath. Excuse me, you have that checked, and it says keep all of them exactly the same. Then it keeps all of the toolpaths exactly, or it keeps all the textures exactly the same. So yeah, you can do. They're easily duplicated. So let me see if I can bring this in here a little bit closer. Just to see one when it's finished. You know, that's just kind of what it's gonna do. So there's a lot of different ways you can texture. I mean, you can take it long, you can make it deeper, and the machine will just pick up and drop. Notice how my bit is not touching the edge. It's because I gave it that offset so it wouldn't go in there and hit that. Alright, so he's down in the dog here. So it's about halfway done. As this thing's cutting, let's pay a little bit more attention back to the ShopBot console. Notice here, say we're 10 minutes in. We're about 45% through our file. So I see in the red there it says I am 45% through the file. Down on the bottom it says elapsed time of 10 minutes and 24 seconds. You know, and that's taking not only our cut, but it's taking our time that it takes our time to get through the sorry, I'm trying to read, but the thing's not coming up. It takes into account too our time for changing bits. So, you know, it's not like we've had that long of cutting, but that's how long since we've hit go with the file, me to change bits, me to keep talking, and then switch over. So looks like Charles has to go. Thanks, Charles. What do you do about the part close to the dog? Do you finish up by hand? Actually, Matt, for the answer on that one is I don't even do anything. I'll zoom in here at the end and show you mine, but really you leave that little flat right there. It's only it's only like 0.125, so you really don't even really see it. And by the time you put a stain on it, you don't see it. I guess if you had to get in there, I'd use a little Dremel and finish it by hand, or use a tapered bit so you could get in closer. Use a tapered ball nose. That would help get around that. So you see, as cool as this is, it does take a little bit longer. It's like 3D, you know. It's great and fun as 3D or probing is. It just takes a lot longer to do. So, but again, it adds a lot. You know, you have a sign that you got. It's simple. But then you go ahead and you add a textured background to it. Makes it look more, you know, one of a kind, unique. You can really, you know, add some value to one of your projects. So as this thing finishes up, let's think about what's our next thing that we're going to be doing here. We're going to be, we're actually going to be taking and putting in a different bit and doing a 1/4 inch profile at the end. So it's just about finished up. We'll see if you can't, I don't know how good the resolution of the camera is, but if you can see around there that 0.125 gap, it's really not that big of a gap. It's not really anything that noticeable. So that's what's going on with there. But that texturing is pretty neat, and that's just 1 coat of stain and then about 3 coats of polyurethane to go on that project. Now, something that may be useful for next training is we were talking about adding a keyhole for hanging this. There is a keyhole gadget built into your software that allows you to do that. Let me vacuum this up so we can see it. And then we'll probably have a bit change going on here. And again, when you're doing this at home, please, you've got your guard on, your safety on, you're not sticking your vacuum. I am a trained professional, all right? I went through a whole 4-minute class on training myself on ShopBot safety. No, for real. I've just got it off for you guys, but you know, make sure that you've got all your guards in place. So it says, is tool number 1 in spindle? No, it's not. We know it's not. Would you like to use a keypad? Yes, just like before. So this is nice. We're able to do these bit changes without exiting out of the software or doing much. So I can just go ahead and change bit now. I'll go a little bit quicker since we've already seen this. I blow it off. I got it nice and flat. Take my wrenches, loosen the one that I have, pop that out. Expand the collet from the collet nut, clean that out, pop it back together, stick your bit in there. Go tight, but not proving to it how strong you are. 0 plate, nice and flat, nothing underneath. Z0 clip, clipped onto the nut so it's not going to fall off. And then I can go ahead and hit escape. It says bit ready, okay. It gives you a backup. Just in case you didn't have the dust foot or something on, hit enter. Machine goes down, takes a measurement, records it, does it again to double check, offsets the thickness of that plate on its own so you don't have to do any of the math, and then it's ready to cut. So this will be our final pass here, our final tool path, where it cuts all the way around the material now. Okay. If you have a big alpha tool, you'll have to hit your green button that hits start and then this. But remember, if you're a standard or a desktop, you'll hit this and it's all going to come on. So make sure your router or your spindle's turned on. And kind of watch how that ramped down in there as well. It didn't just push down. Watch this next pass when it comes around, how it actually ramps down in there. Here we go. It's going to ramp. It goes quick. But we had 3 passes. It goes now. It's going to clean out the ramp from the second pass. And watch, it's going to go down right now. Ramps down versus a straight plunge. Now notice what's it going to do when it hits the final pass. Remember, I went in there and changed that code so it would go to 2418 when it's done. So watch it pick up and then move out of the way to the back of the machine. So that's pretty nice and convenient there. Now my job's not over yet. What I want to do is, before I undo these screws and take this off, I'm going to vacuum this out a little, and then I'm going to either blow some air down in there or stick something down in there, make sure I see that it cut all the way through. If I don't see MDF down there, I know I didn't cut all the way through. So what if I didn't cut all the way through? What are my options? Well, I could go back to the tool path and I could go back and change that cut depth. So let me fix the camera once more. Alrighty. Let me fix the camera, and then I'll pull it off. So camera should be coming back. And there it is. Let me do my screws, and we'll pull it off and take a look at it. So I can see that it cut all the way through. These tabs are almost small enough that I can push through by hand. You don't want to push them through by hand because what it's going to do is it's going to take a big chip out of your wood. So that's where it's nice to have a utility knife, and you can just take these little tabs and narf them down, and then that'll narf right through. And then there's your part that comes out. There's our dog. There's our texture. This is neat. You can really see some good cherry grain down in there. And you got the options when you go to stain them. I mean, look, it's different. It's definitely different than my first one. My first one, I had a skinnier part in the sapwood, where this one here has got more of a heartwood and less. So it changes up, and stain it however you want. But it's just a simple little project. We took 2 circles, made them into something that was a node-edited, unique shape, and then we went in and added a JPEG of your choice, did a bitmap trace, and gave it a couple toolpaths, and it's just a nice, simple little project. So I hope that's something that everybody can get something out of. I'm going to just leave on that note where I can stop the recording, and I hope the video comes through for you guys in recording. I'm sure working on getting this just right, and then we'll get into any specific questions that you have. So there's just your neat little simple project. These little nubs that are left on your tab, from your tab, just sand them off, blow this off real well, and it's just ready for stain. So thank you.